You remember we said the syntactical function of the indicative mood is easy. It makes a statement or a declaration or an assertion. But the subjunctive mood has 6 different functions. At this point, let's take a look at a comparison between the subjunctive and the indicative. The indicative will have a short connecting vowel. The subjunctive will always have a long connecting vowel. The indicative will have an augment for the past time tenses. The subjunctive does not have an augment for the past time tenses because time is not an element. So for an aorist subjunctive, there will not be an augment in front of the verb. The indicative mood makes a statement, whereas the subjunctive mood can be used to express the following 6 different syntactical functions. Let me just go over them briefly with you, and then we'll go back and look at them in more detail. The subjunctive can be a deliberative function, which is a question of great doubt or concern or deliberation. For example, what should we do? What are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? The subjunctive can also show exhortation. For example, let us do something. Let us love one another. Or the subjunctive can show prohibition, a negative command. Do not be anxious. Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. In other words, do not do something, a negative command. The subjunctive can also show emphatic future negation, where something will never, ever occur. For example, where God says to his people, I will never leave you nor fail you. The subjunctive can also be used in certain kinds of conditions, conditions of futurity. For example, if you love me, or in other words, when you do, if and when you do, you will obey my commandments. And the subjunctive would be used in the if part of the condition. The subjunctive can also be used in certain clauses that can show purpose or result. For example, God sent his only begotten Son into the world for what purpose? So that we might live through him. And the verb to live in this purpose clause would be found in the subjunctive mood. Again, the indicative uses all 6 tenses. The subjunctive uses only the present and the aorist tenses. The indicative is concerned with both time and aspect, whereas the subjunctive is simply concerned with aspect. Now, what is the aspect of the present tense? The aspect or the kind of action is one of ongoing, progression, continuation. What is the aspect of the aorist tense? It's simply indefiniteness, that something happens, that there is an event. The following paradigms represent the differences between the indicative and the subjunctive forms in the active voice only. The reason that I'm presenting these paradigms to you to show you the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive is that if you have learned your indicative verb forms, then subjunctive will be easy, because the subjunctive will be using the very same endings that you have already learned in the indicative. But what will the difference be? The difference will be that in the indicative you have a short connecting vowel, but in the subjunctive you have a long connecting vowel. Let's see how that works. Looking at the present indicative first singular, we look at the verb luo. Comparing that with the present subjunctive first singular, it's spelled the same way, luo. In other words, you can't get any longer than an omega on the end of the verb. So how would you know? Are you dealing with an indicative making a statement? Or are you dealing with one of the functions of the subjunctive? Is this a subjunctive verb? You already know the answer to that, don't you? Context. Context is everything. Look at the present indicative second singular, lues. The present subjunctive second singular would be lues with a long eta. Let me show you how that works. If our indicative is lues, and we lengthen this for subjunctive, what we would do is to lengthen the epsilon to an eta. The iota moves to the basement, becomes a subscript, and you still have your sigma on the end. So there's